One of the more disappointing parts of the Chicago Bulls season so far has been Coby White, who has not really followed up on the way that his season went last year. And I'm going to talk about why it's more than just a slump that we can safely say at this point with Coby White. We're also going to look at what the one thing is holding up a potential Zach LaVine trade going to the Denver Nuggets is, and do the Chicago Bulls not have their mind kind of set right on what's holding up that trade. And we're going to get into previewing the game tonight versus the Milwaukee Bucks. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And we got to talk about it. I think it's something that it's evident at this point. Most people are having this conversation in regards to Coby White that are Bulls fans, and it's concerning, right? Of course, you always kind of hold out hope. And even after the last game, the loss against the Boston Celtics, Billy Donovan said, he has faith that eventually Coby White is going to come out of this slump, that he's going to go off and it's going to, he's going to be rocking and rolling and things are going to be back to how they were last year for Coby. I have my doubts on it, and we're going to talk about why into this episode. But when you look at it, we got to first start it off about how much worse have things been for Coby White realistically this season, right? When you look at it, some of the advanced analytics point to things not being as bad as what it looks like when you look at the raw stats. Some things pointed at it being worse. So far this season, we know Coby White's scoring about 2 points less than what he was overall last year. He's also shooting the ball overall 3.2% less. He's shooting the ball at 41% field goal shooting percentage on the season. That's compared to 44% last year. So far this year as well, he's taking 1.7 more three-point attempts per game, and he's shooting it at 35.9%. He was 37.6% last year, right, in the traditional splits. The free throw percentage is up. That's why, and I'm going to talk about why that's kind of keeping some of his true shooting numbers really well, because he is shooting the three ball at the same rate, but a better percentage than what he did last year. And he's also playing better defense, and that's why his defensive shares aren't as bad as what some people make it out to be. But then when you watch the game, it's no denying Coby White's getting cooked sometimes, right? But he's averaging 1.1 steals per game, which is last year he didn't even average a full steal per game. He was under a steal per game, but that goes into the Bulls playing the pass lanes a little bit more generally, things like that. But let's get into the advanced numbers. So offensive rating wise, Coby White is down 4 points in offensive rating. He was 115 offensive rating last year. He's a 111 this year. The defensive rating is actually improved. He's 115. He was 115.8. But again, the steals do help kind of in that area. His assist percentage is down almost a full percent, from 20% to 19%. And his assist to turnover ratio is down as well at 1.6. Last year it was 2.4. And that's just because he's not handling the ball as much either. His defensive rebounding is down 2%, 11 to 9 this season. His overall rebounding percentage is down 1% as well, from 6% to 5% this year. And his true shooting percent last year was 57%. It's 56.8%. But keep in mind, the free throw rate does include into that true shooting percentage, and that's why that's around the same, because he's taking the same amount of free throw attempts per game, and he's hitting it at a better rate, which is good. But it's keeping that true shooting percentage basically where it was last year. And then also effective field goal shooting percentage. He's down 1% from last year at 53% to 52% this year. So those are kind of some of the more advanced numbers. But then when you look at Coby White's raw numbers, the last 10 games have been really bad for Coby. 14.7 points per game. He's doing that on 31% shooting from three, which is not good at all. And he's shooting the ball 42% on 2-point shooting attempts, which, it's okay, but when you look at the where he's taking them at, that's not necessarily the best there either. Like, Coby White is shooting 36% overall from the field, and that as a guard is just not good. I mean, it's objectively terrible, for just being 100% honest with it. And that's where you're running into some big concerns with Coby White. But then, like I said before, we're going to talk about the whys, and why and how he's getting his shots are something that's a big part of this. And this is why I have my qualms about whatever this front office does in the future, because I just feel like Coby White is feeling the results a lot of his own, right? I'm not going to eliminate his own place in his slump, but also this front office continues to try to put players in places that their numbers and their skill set shows you that they're not, right? Coby White so far as impact, it's a huge difference. So when you go back to 2022-23, even though Coby White was not the scorer that he was in 2023-24, the Bulls averaged he had a positive 5.2 point differential when he was on the court, and the Bulls had 6.8 points more per 100 possessions. You take that to last season, he had a positive point differential of 4.6, and the Bulls scored 5.6 points more per 100 possessions when he was on the court. The Bulls also last year had an effective field goal shooting percentage of 4% better when Coby White was on the court. Our turnovers were down 1% when Coby White was on the court. Those things all mattered when we talked about Coby White being one of the Bulls' best players and best clutch players last year, overall he impacted every facet of our offense in ways that were hugely important, right? And even defensively, teams only averaged 1 point more per 100 possession when Coby was on the court. That's marginal. That's almost even. The team's turnover percentage went up. Their effective field goal percentage went down when Coby was on the court last season. Then you get to this season. He has a negative 2.1 point differential. We also are still averaging 0.1 points more per 100 possessions when he's on the court. He's still in the positive. Our turnovers are down 1.7% when he's in there. But then opposing teams, they're shooting a 3% better effective field goal shooting percentage, and they're averaging 2.2 points more per 100 possessions when Coby White's on the court. Everything that you look at is that right now, Coby White has not been a plus player for the Chicago Bulls. He just hasn't. Then when you go and look at where he's getting his shots, this is where the biggest thing and the biggest shift for Coby White happens, right? This year, above the break threes, corner threes are almost 64. It's gone up 64% of Coby White's total offense. His total offense, meaning he's not getting those rhythm shots as much as he did last year. And to put that in comparison, last season, less than 50% of his shots, really only 45% of his shots were in above the break threes and corner threes. What does that mean? 20% of Coby White's offense has changed. Where was that other 20% last year? Mid-range is where a huge point of it. And 15% of his shots were also in the paint last year. When you combine that with mid-range and you combine that with his drives, the largest part of Coby White's offense came from him driving and finishing in the paint and in the mid-range. That is now shifted to being above the break threes and corner threes. You know what it is and what the thing is that we've constantly told people, right? Coby White is not this Ben Gordon level three-point shooter. He's not. Less than 15% now. When you take it, and almost 50% of his offense was coming from mid-range, paint, and drives. You now take that, less than 20% of his offense is coming from Coby White's offense, and the way that he gets his shots has changed so dramatically that, again, that goes to roster construction. Now, has Coby White missed some shots that he should have made? Absolutely. Has Coby White missed a lot of wide open shots? Absolutely. That's what these analytics aren't going to tell you. That's why I'm not blaming it only on the roster construction. But you got to look at that and realize that how a player, especially when you're talking about a scorer, gets their points is just as important as the points that they put up. You have to create an environment in which you're playing players to their best skill set. What have I always complained about Billy Donovan with? He does not use players to the strengths. Now, I will say this year it's even a little bit more different because of the roster that we have and the way that we are trying to play this style, but also you are forcing now a player because Zach and Vooch are a half-court offense, right? You're going to them naturally. Josh Giddey is Josh Giddey. He's going to distribute things like that, but also he's a player that likes to drive. He creates the open shots by using the combination of strength and speed that he has. Even though he's not the fastest player, but the combination of those two to get open buckets, that's going to naturally open up more three-point shots. And while Coby White has actually turned into a decent catch-and-shoot player, which I got to still give him credit for because he wasn't always that. Coby White is shooting the catch-and-shoot opportunities now. Again, 40% of his shots are catch-and-shoots, which again is showing that he's not as on-ball of a creator as he was before, but he's hitting it at almost 40% clip, which is solid, right? Still needs to get better a little bit at that, but it's solid. This goes back to, and this is the thing that I keep worrying about, and maybe this year is just the year they didn't care. They wanted to take a look at a bunch of young talent, and if that's what they wanted to do, great. But this still points towards the Chicago Bulls not understanding one fundamental thing. How you build a team is important to the results that you're going to be able to get out of players. AK and Eversley right now are suffering from the same thing that Gar Forman and John Paxson did towards the end of their run, when they just were drafting players in Wendell and Laurie. And, Laurie was all of a sudden made to be the spot-up three-point shooter when that's not how he was used his first 2 years in the league when he was playing his best. That's what we're seeing happening here again. And it's happening now with players that have already shown you how strong they are and when they play towards their strengths. And that's a bigger concern in the long run of how this front office views players and how this front office views roster construction. Coby White is a right now being a victim of that. I would even say Josh Giddey to an extent is being a victim of not building or constructing the roster in a way that makes sense to some of your starter skill sets. If you're going to use these players with the usage rates that they have, you would at least want to put them in the best situations that it makes sense. And that's just not what we're doing. And that continues to be a thing with this Bulls team that just, it shows whether it's a level of, I don't even know what to call it. Like, if thinking you're the smartest person in the room, whether it's your own ego that you think you can force players to play the way that you want them to play and ignore what their skill set is telling you. That's a big thing. Yes, Coby White's role has changed tremendously. And it's not just about being on ball or off ball. That's a big part of this, right? But it's also about where a player is getting their shots. Where a player is getting their shots. That is a huge part of this. And when you're looking at that, listen, it's going to continue to be a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem for this team. And again, this is something that I'm looking at and saying, this is going to be a problem no matter what they do if they keep trying to force players into these roles that they're telling you that everything is pointing to, every number, every analytic, and the results with the eye test are telling you this ain't working for that player, right? And I get it to a degree, like, yes, you want to build your roster around player skill sets, but to a degree too, like, at some point you have to ask yourself, do we want to put in the assets to build this roster in a way that's that's going to specifically get this out of this player? If not, okay, but then what are you doing, right? When you change a player's role so dramatically, where something that was over half of their offense, you have made now less than 20% of their offense. How do you expect that player, when that player tells you that that's what they're good at, right? And it's not to say Coby White said he wanted to grow off ball, but he's still not a jump shooter. Coby White is not Ben Gordon. Coby White is not Jamal Crawford. Coby White is not the type of player that's just a heater. He has to get into rhythm scoring wise. And that's why when some Bulls fans point out and they say things like, well, Coby White be better in the six-man role. Where? He's never been better coming off the bench. Never. His shooting splits are terrible coming off the bench. The results always for him coming off the bench have always been bad. In 196 games coming off the bench, Coby White averages 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2.6 assists. Those numbers are terrible. And the shooting splits on that are even worse. You're talking about a player that shoots, again, 36%. Is that good? Is that what you want? No, it shouldn't be. He's an overall negative 78 when coming off the bench. That's not a player that screams, oh, boom, you're greater at the six-man role. Keep in mind, even with coming in the six-man role, he's still going to be playing his minutes, a lot of minutes with Lonzo or a lot of minutes with Giddey. Either way, that's still going to be there. And because of that, how you use him on offense is still going to primarily stay the same because you have other players that you're making the primary ball handler. Coby White is a player that needs the ball in his hands to be effective in what he does best, and that's scoring. Not only scoring, his assist rate is better. The way he impacts the game against other players is better when you put him on ball. The experiment to move Coby White to be this off-ball dominant guard, shooting guard, is not going to work. Now, if he could work as a shooting guard if he was still going to be a ball-dominant shooting guard, but that's not how the Bulls are using him. And that goes back to, again, a decision. When people say things like trade Coby, all right, cool. Even if you do say that, if that's the part of where you are and you say Coby isn't fitting right now, let's move him. Unfortunately, now, because you've changed his role so dramatically in a way that is not being effective, where's Coby's trade value now? It's probably in the toilet, right? And that's another thing that this front office does by not putting players in positions that their skill set is telling you that they're best at. you end up ruining, even if you do want to move on from him, you ruin that value. This front office continues to make the same mistakes. And the more and more that this goes on, they're starting to make some of the same mistakes that Gar Forman and John Paxson made. And as a Bulls fan, I'm telling you right now, that's concerning. That's big concern. But as always, you guys can let me know how you feel down below. All right, another thing that's concerning about this team is that it seems more and more over the weekend that we've heard that the thing that's holding up this Denver Nuggets trade is potentially Najee and the Bulls not wanting that player. But before we get into that, we did hear that the Bulls Zach LaVine in regards to the Nuggets trade rumors. He said this: "I'm not the one controlling that. That's what's been so good about my mindset. I can control what my mood is and my mindset going into each game. Outside of that, it's out of my control. I signed a lengthy contract here for a reason. I wanted to stay here, but it's always good to know that you have interest because that means you're a player other people want to play with." And listen, I love, Zach LaVine seems like the maturity as far as his understanding of the business part of basketball has really grown. And Zach LaVine is having a really good season, right? You can't take away from the season that Zach LaVine is having. And I get it where a lot of Bulls fans want to see Zach LaVine stay a Chicago Bull. Listen, and I've said this before many times, moving on from Zach LaVine isn't a failure of who Zach was as a player. It's a failure of the front office to actually put the right team in that could take advantage of Zach LaVine. And he was miscast as a number one. Just was, right? Zach LaVine is if Zach LaVine's your second best player, or even your third, if he's your third best player, you better damn well be a championship contending team, right? And that's why you see a team like the Nuggets maybe pivot. Now, the thing with all this is that reportedly, and this is where we're going into, despite Zach LaVine's mindset and everything, one of the things holding this potential deal up with the Denver Nuggets is Zeke Nazi's contract. Now, Zeke Nazi's contract, I want to make no mistake about it, it's $8 million. And while Zeke Nazi, when you look at some of the advanced analytics with it, which is a real big concerning one, when he's on the court, or when he's off the court, the Denver Nuggets are 56.6 points per 100 possessions worse when he's on the floor. Now, that comes down to as well, he's not playing a lot of minutes for them right now. He's played 16 games, has played a total of 79 minutes, but he's averaging 1.3 points, 0.4 rebounds. He's just not playing good right now. But here's the thing that I'm going to flip this on. Zeke Nazi's contract is $8 million, right? And the fact of the matter is that we've paid ball-headed Ho more than that. Javon Carter more than that. When you look at over the last season and up until this point, I get it that his contract, he does have some time left on that contract. It's $8.8 million. It gets less every year. If you're telling me, right, that the thing holding you up is an $8 million contract, which is less than the mid-level exception, that to me asks, all right, maybe the Bulls just they don't really want to move Zach. Maybe that's the case. Like $8 million in the modern NBA isn't a lot of money. And again, I get it that the Bulls, every dollar counts for the Bulls because we're not a luxury tax-paying team. But at the same time, right, if $8 million is stopping you from one of the best offers you've gotten for Zach LaVine, then either you just don't like the offer overall or you're not as committed to moving from Zach as what people are thinking. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? Again, pick a direction and stick to it. If you are not truly committed to moving off of Zach, moving on from Vooch to keep your top 10 pick or whatever the motivation would be behind it, great. I don't want you to do things your heart's not really in. But then adamantly say that you're not. Move the fuck on, right? Focus on then adding to this team if that's what you're going to do. That's the thing with AK and Eversley. And that's why I always say, they'll make some moves and the right decision. They'll do some right things, but I always doubt their ability to not only close out deals, and I don't even mean just trades. I mean, how they close out free agent conversations and extension talks, all those things. But it's the vision. It's the lack of vision from these guys. And it continues to be evident with this team, and we'll see if it changes at any point in time. I don't really have too much faith as far as I have so many doubts around just this front office and their how they want to build a team just keeps falling short. But maybe it'll be proven that I'm tripping. I've been tripping before, and maybe we'll see when it comes down to it, and things will get better. Maybe that's the case. But as of right now, you've been trying to move a player for years. You reportedly get offered the best deal that you've gotten offered, and an $8 million contract is what's holding that up. I'm sorry. Watch what I say. Even if the Bulls do not do this deal, they will have a player of $6 to $8 million on the back end of their bench that does not play, regardless of whatever they do. And so if you are going to have that regardless, just kind of makes me doubt your commitment in a way. But we'll see what's going to happen there. But let's go ahead and flip it. The Chicago Bulls do play the Milwaukee Bucks. We are at home tonight. And this is a game in which, the Milwaukee Bucks are a very different team from when we faced them earlier in the season. They've really turned their defensive round. They've turned into one of the better defenses in the NBA in what they're doing. And this team is just fitting together a lot better than what they were fitting in earlier. They're allowing 112 points per game, right? Which is, it's still, it has them in the middle of the pack, but they were like dead last. They were down there with the Bulls at one point over the season. And they're averaging basically 113 points per game. So their point differential is still in the positive. But while the Bulls average 118 points per game, but we give up 121 points per game, this is going to be one of those games that, again, we're looking to see how the Bulls defense, how tough do they play? Do the Bulls play tough enough defense and the offense is shooting good enough to be in this game against the Milwaukee Bucks? Listen, they just split with the Boston Celtics, right? We faced the Milwaukee Bucks today, and then we faced the Atlanta, and then we go to Milwaukee and we face them again. So that's going to be an important kind of another, 2-game series, if you want to say, to see how the Bulls and what they react to and how the Milwaukee Bucks, adjust and react to them. But we're at home today. And the Bulls have not been a good team at home. I made a mistake. The game Saturday is also at home. So there you go. We faced the Bucks 2 times at home. That's going to be tough. So we'll see what this Bulls team has today, man. But things stay the same. Execution on offense, and then enough defense to where it doesn't hurt what you're doing on offense. Can the Bulls do that? We'll see. The Milwaukee Bucks defense is not going to make it easy. Bobby Portis, who has not been the same Bobby Portis as he was at different times for that team, he doesn't have that same umph, but we know that he gets up when he plays against the Chicago Bulls. So we'll see how that goes as well. But overall, let me know your thoughts on all the topics down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks